Welcome to the deep dive. We've got some really interesting material you sent over this time, an article from menmeetmen.com.
That's right. It's called Bay Cruising Spots UK, mapping the UK's hidden terrain.
Okay, so yeah, it sounds like we're going on a bit of an exploration today,
Yeah.
looking at the actual, physical spots where gay and bi men meet up in the UK.
Exactly. It's kind of moving beyond the apps, isn't it? Looking at how connections happen out there in the real world. The article calls it a hidden terrain.
I like that phrase, hidden terrain. Makes it sound like this secret map overlaying familiar places.
And it suggests there's still this pull towards, I guess, immediacy, physical presence, something apps maybe don't quite capture in the same way.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just one kind of place, is it? The article breaks it down quite a bit. We're talking public parks. Woodlands, they call them beats.
Uh-huh. And then you've got motorway lay-bys, service stations. Very different vibe there, I imagine.
Completely. And then the more risky territory, historically speaking anyway, public toilets or cottaging.
Right, which we'll need to talk about carefully. But the list goes on. Adult cinemas, private clubs.
Saunas, which seem more purpose-built, coastal spots, beaches.
Even those sort of in-between urban spaces, alleyways, canals, underpasses.
And maybe surprisingly, gyms and changing rooms are mentioned too, but that sounds like a tricky one.
A very gray area, yeah?
So our plan today is really to, unpack these different locations. What's the atmosphere like? How do people, connect? The dance, as the article puts it.
And crucially, what are the considerations around safety, discretion? What does the source material actually tell us about navigating these spaces?
Exactly. Ready to dive in.
Let's do it. It does make you think, though, why these physical places are still so relevant with all the tech we have.
Good question. Maybe it's that different kind of anonymity. Or the buzz of a real-world encounter. Maybe just digital fatigue.
Could be all of those. The article hints that these spots offer something tangible, a different kind of connection.
Okay, so let's kick off with what the article calls the classic ground. Public parks, heaths, and woodlands beats.
Right, the beats. Good name. Suggests they're well-established routes, almost.
Yeah. And the vibe seems to be about transformation, doesn't it? Places like Hampstead Heath, Clapham common normal parks by day.
But then, come evening, or maybe specific times, they shift. They take on a different purpose for some people.
And the landscape itself plays a huge role. The article mentions natural screening bushes, trees, dips in the ground, hidden paths.
Yeah, it creates pockets of privacy within a very public area. And apparently, distinct zones can develop within bigger parks. Even car parks can be initial gathering points.
Interesting. And the dance, the way people communicate, sounds incredibly subtle.
Mostly nonverbal, it seems.
Yeah.
Sustained glances, maybe walking past someone a couple of times deliberately, a nod, just lingering.
Like a silent conversation. And the feel of the place can change completely depending on the weather, the time.
Oh, definitely. A warm summer evening versus a cold, wet night. Totally different atmosphere, you'd imagine. It really highlights how much we communicate without words.
But because they are public spaces, there are risks involved, which the article points out.
Absolutely. Running into the general public, dog walkers, families, joggers, that's always a possibility, especially during daylight hours.
And that brings us to the legal side. The Public Order Act 1986 gets a mention. Basically, laws against sexual acts in public, as someone might see and be offended.
The legal risk is described as moderate in these park settings. But then there's personal safety, too, especially in isolated areas after dark.
Though the article suggests serious incidents aren't common, they can happen. It also notes police action is often complaint-driven.
Which implies that if things are kept very discreet and nobody complains, it might often go unnoticed by authorities. Mike.
Okay, let's shift gears. Transient territories, motorway lay-bys, and service stations. This feels totally different. Utilitarian, anonymous.
Yeah, much more about convenience for people on the move, right? Truckers, commuters, long-distance travelers.
These functional spaces getting a whole second life. In lay-bys, it's often car-to-car interactions, apparently.
Whereas service stations offer more options, the toilets, obviously, but also lorry parks, maybe picnic areas, pathways around the back.
And they're open 247. Peak times, often late evening or overnight, which makes sense.
The dance here sounds more direct, though. Still maybe nonverbal, but quicker. A clear look between drivers slowing down, someone getting out and walking purposefully.
Yeah, focused.
Yeah.
And certain spots on major routes, the A1M, M6, M25 mentioned, become known for this.
But again, risks. Public observation is a big one. Staff, other travelers, potentially police patrols.
And the toilets and service stations. That brings in the high legal risks of cottaging.
Exactly. Plus, general safety in isolated car parks late at night. Discretion seems absolutely paramount here.
Which leads us nicely, if maybe uncomfortably, to the historical hotspot, high risk. Public toilets, cottaging.
Yeah, the article paints this as having a long history but being, frankly, extremely precarious now. High tension, extreme caution needed.
The landscape is specific. Public loose, often near transport hubs, parks, shopping centers.
And historically, even the design gaps under doors, mirrors could facilitate things. But the article notes many hotspots have been redesigned or are heavily monitored now precisely to stop it.
Making the dance hyper subtle. Foot tapping, hand signals, mirror contact. The risk of misreading things must be huge.
Enormous. And the legal risk, the article is very clear. It's incredibly high.
Right, the Sexual Offenses Act 2003. It criminalizes any sexual activity in a public lavatory. Full stop.
Doesn't matter if anyone else is there or offended, the consequences can be life-changing. Sex offenders register serious. Plus safety risks like entrapment, robbery, assault.
So the advice from the source is basically just don't.
Pretty much, yeah. It's presented as extremely high risk across the board.
Okay, let's move to somewhere potentially safer. Controlled environments, adult cinemas, and private clubs.
Right, a definite shift here. The vibe is more secure, legally speaking anyway. Anonymous encounters are sort of expected within limits.
These places are actually set up for it, aren't they? Cinemas with communal areas, private booths, clubs with dark rooms, mazes.
Exactly. Places like Empire Cinema Club, the Greenhouse are mentioned as examples. Often there's an entry fee, maybe membership, which changes the dynamic.
And the dance becomes more direct, proximity, maybe touch, clearer invitations.
Yeah, less ambiguity because there's a shared understanding of the space. And it's but consent remains absolutely key.
Of course. And there are house rules too, right?
Yeah.
Hygiene, behavior.
Definitely. The legal risk inside, provided everyone consents and follows the rules, is minimal for the activity itself. The focus shifts more to personal boundaries, safer sex.
And usually no cameras allowed. Strict privacy.
A crucial rule for maintaining that safe space.
Okay, next up, purpose-built pleasure.
Yeah.
Gay saunas. This sounds like the most above-board commercial end of things. Cruising is normalized here.
That's the picture, yes. They combine spa facilities, lockers, showers, steam rooms, jacuzzis maybe with dedicated play spaces like cabins or dark rooms.
Places like Steam Complex in Leeds, Base in Manchester, Pleasuredrome in London get mentioned.
And they often have specific policies like towel only or clothing optional, which sets the tone. Defined operating hours, entry fees, sometimes membership.
So the dance here is even more overt.
Seems so. Eye contact, following someone, initiating contact, it's more expected. Different areas might even signal different intentions. And there can be social spaces, too, like lounges.
And the legal risk for consensual activity inside.
Virtually zero, according to the article. The main considerations become personal safety, like guarding against the rare instance of theft, respecting consent always, and safer sex practices.
Makes sense. Okay, let's head outdoors again. Edge of the world, coastal areas and beaches.
Ah, the seaside. The vibe here is described as more open, a sense of freedom, often using natural cover again, popular in warmer weather, obviously.
So we're talking secluded beaches, dunes, cliff paths, coastal car parks. Near Brighton, Blackpool, Studland Beach are mentioned as examples.
And timing matters. Sunset, specific tides might see more activity, nature's rhythm playing a part.
The dance sounds a bit like the parks again. Observation, positioning, glances, walking back and forth.
Pretty much. Car parks often act as those initial meeting or observation points. Discretion is still important, though, because of other beach users.
And the risks. Encountering the public, obviously. Potential for police or warden patrols.
And the environment itself, weather, tides. Safety in isolated spots after dark is a factor, too. And, just basic stuff like not leaving litter behind.
Legally, it falls under similar public order rules as parks, right? If witnessed and causing offense.
That seems to be the case, yes. Moderate risk, dependent on visibility and discretion.
Okay, back to the city. Urban interstices, alleyways, canals, bridges, and underpasses. Sounds a bit gritty.
Functional, edgy, reliant on local knowledge and timing, that's the description. Using neglected spaces, maybe poor lighting, for privacy.
Like canal towpaths in Birmingham or Manchester late at night. Underpasses, service roads. Places people don't usually hang around without a reason.
And the popularity of these spots can shift, maybe due to development or increased surveillance.
The dance here is described as quick. Lingering in shadows, brief eye contact. Encounters tend not to be drawn out.
Makes sense. But the risks sound potentially higher for personal safety. Poor lighting, isolation can attract crime.
And you might still run into passersby or security. Plus, more CCTV everywhere these days.
Yeah, the article flags these as needing caution, maybe not ideal for newcomers. Legal risks under the Public Order Act still apply if seen.
Okay, last category. Gray areas. Gyms, changing rooms, and showers. This one feels inherently problematic.
Extremely. The article stresses these are non-sexual environments by design. Any cruising activity is crossing a line into ambiguity.
The dance here would have to be incredibly subtle, right? And the risk of misinterpretation must be massive.
Exactly. Prolonged eye contact, lingering while changing, specific positioning, and it's relying on guesswork in a space where people expect privacy. Mutual signals would have to be absolutely crystal clear. And
Even then, the risks are huge. Getting reported to management, losing your membership.
or worse, accusations of harassment. It violates the intended use of the space and potentially others' boundaries.
So the advice here is pretty clear-cut, too.
Very much so. The article strongly discourages this activity in gyms.
Right, so we've mapped out this whole diverse terrain, from
Yeah.
parks to saunas to lay-bys. How does someone actually figure out where active spots might be, and how do they stay safe? The article touches on this, right? Finding your bearings.
It does. It talks about reading the signs, seeing people hanging around without an obvious purpose, doing repeated circuits, the charged eye contact, maybe cars parked in certain ways.
That's all like learning the local patterns.
Exactly. And it mentions getting intel online from discrete sites or forums, but with a big health warning about accuracy. Information can be outdated or just plain wrong.
Good point. And then the core advice. General safety and etiquette. This seems crucial wherever you are.
Absolutely fundamental. Consent is number one. Non-negotiable. Discretion is vital too, for everyone's sake.
Situational awareness, trusting your gut feeling if something feels off.
Knowing the local laws, especially the higher risk stuff around toilets and public visibility, practicing safer sex caring and using protection is your responsibility.
And basic courtesy, like leave no trace, especially in parks or beaches. Don't leave litter or damage things.
And importantly, if something bad does happen, if you're a victim of crime, report it. The article mentions Gallup specifically as an organization that supports LGBTQ plus people facing abuse or violence.
That's really valuable information. So it's quite a spectrum we've covered, isn't it? Each type of space has its own distinct feel, its own rules, spoken or unspoken, and its own level of risk.
Definitely. And it shows that despite technology, these physical spaces clearly still meet a need for some people, whether it's anonymity, immediacy, or just a preference for real-world encounters over screens.
It really makes you think about connection itself, doesn't it? How we seek it out in all these different forms.
It does, and it leaves us with a thought, perhaps. How will technology and changing social views continue to shape these, well, hidden landscapes? What does the enduring appeal of meeting face-to-face in these specific kinds of places tell us about ourselves in this digital world?
That is definitely something to mull over.
Yeah.
Now, this whole deep dive was sparked by that article from menmeetmen.com.
Right. And they position themselves as a resource in this area.
Yeah, looking at their site, they seem to offer quite a lot of audio guides. Safety tips are prominent. Info on cruising culture itself. Hookup apps are covered too. Guides to saunas.
So aiming to be pretty comprehensive and, it seems, non-judgmental about these ways of connecting.
Seems that way. So if any listeners want to explore this further, find more details or resources on discrete gate connections, the article suggests checking out their website.
That's the call to action. Visit menmeetmen.com for more information.